we should kick off.
Absolutely. So first up today, we have our own Amy Irvine. So Amy's going to be talking about it's more than just links and why reactive PR needs to be part of your 2021 strategy. Amy's a senior digital PR strategist here at Digitaloft. She's been in the industry over 3 years, and I'm really excited to hear what Amy has to share. For us as an agency, Amy's been really instrumental in doing something different to what we always did, to bringing more of that traditional PR background and product PR, expert insights PR, really making a difference to strategies. And I'm really excited to have Amy share her tips, tricks, and insights today. So Amy, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, James. So hi, everyone. As James said, I'm a senior digital PR strategist at Digitaloft. And today I'm going to be speaking about why reactive PR should be part of your 2021 strategy and why it's so much more than just links. So cast your mind back to 2020. It's a year that most of us want to forget, but it actually really taught us a lot as digital PRs. We suddenly had lots of campaigns planned in, which were no longer relevant to the media landscape. So reactive PR became a crucial part of our digital PR strategies as the news cycle was changing so quickly. And the great thing about reactive PR is it means that you can stay agile and change your strategy as the news cycle changes. But first, I want to clear up some reactive PR myths. So these are that it's traditional only, it's only crisis communication, it's only to sell products, you can't plan reactive PR, and the one that annoys me the most is that you can't get links. So sometimes clients and other members of the team might not understand the value of reactive PR because it's often associated with traditional PR and crisis communication, and they think it's something you can't plan strategically. But by landing links like this on a regular basis, it becomes easier to incorporate reactive PR as part of our overall link building and digital PR strategies. So what is reactive PR? So reactive PR is when we use the news agenda to piggyback on topics. It's when we react to opportunities, whether this is a breaking news story, a change in the weather, or a new TV show. And it's when we demonstrate insight based on experience and expertise, and we position our clients as experts in their field. And we should be using minimal resources, so no big fancy graphics or interactive elements. And it should be really quick to turn around. And it should be part of your 2021 digital PR strategy alongside creative campaigns. And it's one of my favorite ways of landing really targeted and relevant links. But it's so much more than just links, as it increases brand awareness as your client is seen speaking on relevant topics in top-tier publications. It gets your client in front of their target audience, as the links you secure advise your client's potential target market. And it positions your client as the expert, as you are providing the press with expert advice and insights. And it can also increase traffic and sales. So you might be thinking, where do I start? Well, I'm going to run through 5 pillars to really help you nail your reactive PR strategy. And if you manage to nail these areas, you're bound to start seeing success for your clients. So the 5 pillars are journalist requests, seasonal activity, media relations, news tracking, and utilizing the client. So the first one is journalist requests. So there are many ways that we can have journalist requests right at our fingertips, or even landing straight into our inbox. So there is the hashtag journo request on Twitter, which journalists use when they are looking for experts or products or certain data for stories which they are working on. There's Harrow or Help a Reporter Out, which is when journalist requests land straight into your inbox. Harrow sends 2 roundup emails a day, a morning and an evening edition, and it also kind of arranges the requests into the different sectors. And then there's paid for media relation tools such as Response Source, which again is when journalist requests land straight into your inbox. Now, these 3 tools are great for obviously journalist requests, but they are also really good for being able to spot topics and trends in the media, as if one journalist is writing about something, chances are many more are too. So the main thing about journalist requests is short deadlines. As the news cycle is changing so quickly, journalists are working on 6 to 8 stories a day. So once that deadline is passed, chances are they've already moved on to the next story of the day. But there are many ways that we can be prepared for these short deadlines. So we can keep a bank of expert commentary. When a client comes on board, I think to myself, what are the topics which this client can genuinely offer expert advice and insight on? Then we start to build a bank of expert commentary, which we can tweak and adapt for future requests. But if a request comes in and you don't have anything suitable on file, then write up quotes for clients to help speed up that process. And explain to clients that the faster you respond to these requests, the more likely you are to be featured. If need be, give your clients a false deadline to make sure you hit the journalist deadline. So this is an example of when I logged on to Twitter at about 8:30 a.m. one morning, and I saw that Natalie Morris from the Metro was looking for a sleep expert to help on a story. So I got in touch and sent everything over. And by 11:20 a.m. that same morning, we had landed this lovely link on the Metro. And I think this just highlights how important those short deadlines are, as Natalie was actively working on that story. This was then also naturally picked up by The Sun, so 2 national top tier links for about 20 minutes work. So the do's and don'ts of journalist requests. So do check the responses regularly, every couple of hours if possible, and make sure other members of your team are checking them too, to make sure you don't miss any opportunities. And then do keep a bank of expert commentary, as this just means you're one step ahead of those short deadlines. And then thank journalists for the coverage and just reiterate that you're happy to help on any future stories. But don't respond to irrelevant responses, as this only ends up damaging relationships as you're wasting the journalist's time. So the second pillar is seasonal activity. So there are many events and occasions throughout the year which happen every year. For example, Christmas, Halloween, Valentine's Day, or even back to school. Then there's awareness days. So there is an awareness day for pretty much everything at the moment. But if you see one which is perfect for your client, just double check it's one the media usually cover. Then there's TV shows. So there's certain TV shows which come around every year, such as I'm a Celebrity and the Great British Bake Off. But then there's also new TV shows like Bridgerton. And then there's the weather. Us Brits love talking about the weather, and journalists are no different. So we often don't plan our creative content campaigns around seasonal activity, as it means a time restraint on pitching. However, we don't ignore that journalists in the media are constantly writing about these different topics. So as PRs, it's our job to figure out how our clients can add to that conversation. And Reactive PR is perfect for this. So how can we add to the conversation? You can do this through expert-led guides and advice and opinion. So for example, in the form of tips, or you can go and look for some extra data. So for example, maybe the Instagram earnings of popular reality TV show contestants, or you can go and source case studies. So this is just a little snapshot into some of the reactive PR we've done at Digitaloft. So before Christmas, we worked with our sleep expert to come up with expert tips on how to get your kids to go to bed on Christmas Eve. And this was picked up by national lifestyle and parenting publications. And then around Halloween, we worked with our client in the optician space to issue an expert-led warning about Halloween contacts. And we supported this with 3 really gruesome case studies. And then before Christmas, when I'm a Celebrity came back on our screens, we worked out how much Ant and Dec could earn on Instagram, and we pitched this out to relevant press. The other really important thing about seasonal activity is timing. You want to make sure that you get it out before your competitors, but not too early that journalists don't care and aren't writing about it yet. So the do's and don'ts of seasonal activity. So do have a strategy. You know that these events happen every year, so plan for them and be proactive. And then add key events, awareness days, and TV shows into your calendar, just to make sure you don't miss any opportunities. And get in there early, ideally before your competitors. But don't comment on any irrelevant seasonal activity. If it feels forced, it probably is, and journalists will be able to see right through this. So my third pillar is media relations. So you don't need to have strong media relations with journalists to land links, but they certainly do help. Now, this is something I learned from my traditional PR background, as I often met journalists face to face, which really helped me build strong relationships. And then I found that journalists started coming directly to me with requests because of those relationships. So how do you go about forming relationships with journalists? Well, the most important thing is you need to do your research. When a client comes on board, I think to myself, which journalist can I see writing about this client? And then I start to build a really targeted, relevant list of contacts. And then I put together a tailored introduction email to the journalist about the client. So I include a hyperlink to the client, including a short bio. Then I also summarize what they can offer, and I highlight any experts who can offer advice and opinion. And then if product PR is something they're interested in, I would also highlight the key products. And then if your list of journalists is really targeted and relevant, you should start getting responses and emails like this from journalists at really relevant publications. And then you'll start securing links and coverage like this. But it's so much more than just links, as this has increased brand awareness. It's positioned your client as the expert in their field, and it's got them in front of their target market. So the do's and don'ts of media relations. So do your research. This is the most important thing. You need to make sure the journalists you're contacting are actually going to want to hear about you and your client. And then think of ways that you can really strengthen those relationships. So for example, you could offer them an exclusive. And also, once you start securing the links and coverage, make sure you send a thank you note. Remember, journalists are human too. But don't send a blanket email to hundreds of journalists, as they can see right through this. So my fourth pillar is newsjacking. So to newsjack, you need to watch, listen, or read the news. Find the way which works best for you, whether it's watching morning breakfast TV, whether it's listening to the radio while you're at work, or having the BBC News app on your phone. And then you need to know exactly what topics your client wants to be seen talking about. And you need to start monitoring the news for these topics and looking for relevant stories. Obviously, as PRs, we're really busy and working on multiple projects. So try setting up Google alerts for certain keywords to make sure you don't miss any breaking news story. Then when you find the perfect breaking news story for your client, you need to make sure that you add to it. Don't just rewrite what's already been published. Come in with either a new opinion or a new data set and make sure that it's brand new information. And you need to act fast, like the journalist requests. Ideally, you need to get something out within the hour of the breaking news story. So this is an example of last month. Obviously, there was lots of noise in the press about UK influencers being in Dubai. So we jumped on this and we worked out how much these celebrities and influencers were making by posting on Instagram. And this was picked up by many of the national publications, as well as publications such as Heat World. Another example is last year, at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, the news broke that Jeff Bezos had added $24 billion to his fortune. Now, we'd previously worked on a campaign called the $1 Trillion Club, which predicted who was going to be the world's first trillionaire, and Jeff Bezos topped that list. So we newsjacked the breaking news story with this existing campaign and went on to earn an additional 900 links from publications such as the likes of the New York Post, the Mirror, and USA Today. So the do's and don'ts of newsjacking. So do consume the news. You can't newsjack if you don't know what news stories are breaking. And then do add to the breaking news story. Don't just rehash what's already been written. And do act fast, ideally within the hour. But don't shoehorn your client into any news topic. Last year, we saw lots of brands and PR trying to shoehorn themselves into the coronavirus pandemic. But this is just a big no if it's not relevant. And then finally, the client. So sometimes the client is the great story. And this was the case last year when we noticed that mums were leaving amazing reviews about our client Pound Toy in online forums. Now, knowing that journalists love anything with mum's stamp of approval, we turned this round into a pitch, supported with a quote by the client, and secured over 30 links. But this was so much more than just links, as it increased brand awareness, as it was a really brand-focused piece. It drove a high volume of traffic to the site, which resulted in an increase in sales, and all of this for literally less than an hour's work. And it was one of the most successful things the client has ever done. And then there's client products. So product PR is more known as a traditional tactic, but it's a great way of landing super targeted and relevant links, which people actually click on, which leads to sales. So how can you go about getting product PR placement for your clients? Well, there are certain journalists at different publications whose job it is to write roundups and review articles, anything from the 10 best drills to the 10 best lawnmowers to the 10 best pillows. Then there's also relevant gift guides, be it Christmas, Valentine's Day, or Mother's Day, or you can create a story around the product. So it's Valentine's Day in a few days, and we work with an online flower delivery service. So we wanted to make sure they were hitting all of those Valentine's Day gift guides. So how did we do this? Well, we researched relevant journalists, looking who was covering similar gift guides previously and writing review articles. Then we put together a pitch introducing the Valentine's Day range, included high-res imagery and offered product samples. And then we timed it perfectly. We went back to 2020 and looked at when those Valentine's Day gift guides were going live. And this was just an example of one of the emails we got back from a journalist. So she said it was a perfectly timed email and she was adding us to an article she was currently working on for The Sun. But we didn't stop there. We went on to get our client included in articles on The Sun, Real Homes, House Beautiful, Mashable, Hello, Evening Standard, and many more. And then last but not least, client data. So client internal data is a great way of creating really unique stories, and no other brands have the same data, so they can't replicate it. And this was exactly what we did with Cosmetify around Black Friday. We utilized their internal data to reveal the most in-demand beauty products, and this was picked up on the likes of The Sun and Woman and Home. So the do's and don'ts of utilizing the client. So do track what people are saying about your client. Sometimes this is a story in itself. And do create stories using your client's internal data. And do ask your clients if they are happy to send review samples to journalists, as this is a great way of securing product placement. But don't promise review samples if you're not sure you can get them, as this will only end up damaging relationships. So to summarize, these are my 5 pillars of reactive PR. And once you start to nail these areas, they start to intertwine within each other. As if you nail your media relations, journalists will start coming directly to you with journalist requests. So reactive PR is a great way of building strong relationships with relevant journalists, positioning your client as the expert in their field, meaning that journalists are much more likely to come back to you for comment for other stories further down the line. And reactive PR is perfect for building targeted and relevant links. But it's so much more than just links, as it increases brand awareness, as your client is seen speaking on relevant topics in top-tier publications. It gets your client in front of their target audience, as the links you secure guide and advise your client's potential target market. And it positions your client as the expert in their field, and it can increase traffic and sales. So my key takeaways are, there are 5 main pillars to reactive PR: journalist requests, seasonal activity, media relations, news tracking, and utilizing your client through data and products. Reactive PR should be part of your 2021 strategy, as it means you can stay agile and change your strategy as the news cycle changes. And it's so much more than just links. Reactive PR can also increase brand awareness, gets your client in front of their target audience, and much more. Thank you.
Cool, brilliant. That was that was really great, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. And there's lots of questions coming in. So we've got about 10 minutes for questions actually. So let me fire away on the questions that have come in. So the first question that's come in, Amy, is you mentioned brand awareness as one of the benefits. How do you measure this and show the value of this back to clients?
So obviously, when we're reporting to clients, we report links, but then we also report which publications are having brand mentions too.
Cool. And then the second one is, where did your data on Instagram earnings come from? So, e.g., the influencers in Dubai. How are you sort of getting that data, and where was that data coming from?
Yeah, so we have a formula which we use in-house. But then we also use the influencer marketing calculator too, which is available online.
Awesome, good stuff. They're coming in thick and fast. One challenge that we encounter is our media lists are becoming obsolete. Journalists change jobs, or the medium is so niche that it can take 12 months plus between campaigns that are relevant for them. Do you spend time updating your media lists, and how do you tackle that?
Yeah, definitely. You have to spend time updating your media list. Obviously, there's lots of cuts in journalism jobs. Journalists are either on holiday or out of office. There's so many things which can affect your media list. So it's really important to keep them updated. And also, if you do get a bounce back and you find a journalist is on holiday, go and find an alternative journalist to get in touch with. And lots of the times, journalists do include other journalists in their out of office. So it's really important to make sure you go to those as well.
Awesome, thank you. So which one next? So how do you build a bank of comments that are relevant to news stories that haven't broken yet?
Yeah, so you just look back at kind of previous requests or previous stories, go and research kind of the field your clients are in, and see what relevant journalists are speaking about, and you can easily spot the trends and topics in that area, and speak to the client too. They're probably going to know what's hot in their sector, and work with them to kind of build that bank of commentary.
Yeah, it's almost preempting, isn't it? I know, yeah. And I think, we all talk about reactive PR, but I think, the one of the ways I've been talking about it for a few years now is sort of this expert insights. It's not always got to be reacting to breaking news. And if there isn't necessarily the news, go and make the news, find out, talk to clients about what's hot in the industry, what the trends they're seeing are, and pitch that out in the same way as you would the reactive.
Yeah. Okay.
So an interesting one, changing it up a little bit. How did you get into PR?
So I actually did a journalism degree in Leeds, and when I was there, I did some work experience at an agency in Leeds, and then I remember my first lecture at uni. Our journalism tutor said to us, only 20% of you in this room will actually become a journalist. Most of you will go into other careers such as PR. And so that's how I got into it. I did work experience at an agency and haven't looked back, really.
There you are, yeah. And it's your second stint at Digitaloft, so.
Yeah, I came back.
Absolutely, you did. So when you have a new client, how long should you tell a client to wait before seeing results? As sometimes clients want results yesterday.
Yeah, so I think this depends on the client. If it's someone who's really happy to be reactive and they can work with you and provide you with expert comment, you can start pitching out stuff straight away, look through their previous blog content and see if you can kind of use it to go and get links. But I mean, ideally, you could say anything. I mean, you can pitch something out and it can get picked up straight away, or it can take 2 weeks. So it is a hard one. It is a hard one to predict, but between 1 day and 2 weeks, I'd say, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you go to research and find journalists to build and maintain your lists?
So use Cision, which is our kind of database, but then also Twitter, and just going on the relevant publications and seeing who's writing those articles, and do a little bit of polite stalking. If they're not on the database, find their Twitter. So that's how I keep up to date.
Brilliant, thank you. Another one that's just come in. Do you often have problems with your clients' PR teams when trying to do reactive PR, and how do you tackle it? It's an interesting one that comes up, I think, time and time again. And what are your thoughts on that, Amy?
Yeah, so it is a tricky one. So obviously some clients' PR teams are really happy that kind of someone else is working on it and will be really welcoming, whereas kind of other ones will be really against it. So you just need to try and form that relationship with that other PR agency, and just remember that you're all working towards the same end goal. But yeah, and just kind of make sure that you are working together on the strategy. You don't kind of want to have a bad relationship with the other PR team. Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes back to, as you say, having that shared goal. Everybody is working towards the same goal. And I think also, sort of in my experience, the way I've seen it work in the past is understand what that agenda is. Often in-house PR teams, their agenda is largely very, very close product PR.
Yeah.
Or releases, announcements, that sort of thing. Now, they're often really busy on that. So if you can go and, they're maybe not doing the commentary on the trends, etc., and, working alongside, work together, I think, as opposed to in separate silos, that's the best way to get success on that. Know what each other's doing, know how it all adds value to the wider strategy. And all good. So we've still got about 5 minutes left. Still lots and lots of questions, don't worry. So when do you think is the best time to send out a release, and how quickly do you follow up on it after you've sent it out?
So to be honest, we work story first, so we don't really kind of think that there is a best time. We do like to go out early in the morning. So a lot of my emails I will schedule for around between like 8 and 9 a.m. And then for a follow-up, ideally, I want to follow up after 3 days. I don't really want to do it any sooner, as the journalist could have kind of just been really busy. So we like to follow up like 3 to 4 days, I'd say. But I only follow up once. I'd never kind of keep following up. I'd only ever follow up once.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. So, what would I say? Which next? Okay, so a question's come in. As a business, they haven't actively had a digital PR plan. Have you got any advice on best approaches to get started?
I think it obviously kind of depends what your business is, but go and kind of look at what other people are doing in your sector. Go and see what your competitors are doing. Go and find kind of relevant publications. Build a list of dream publications, and then go and see what those publications are writing about, and if it's something that you can comment on.
Cool, absolutely. So a really quick one that's come in is, could you please repeat the name of the journalist database that you shared?
Cision. Was it Cision?
Yeah. Okay, another one that's come in is, how do you ensure that a journalist links to your client in reactive comments? We often land comments through newsjacking, but they often remove the link and just paste in the brand URL.
Yeah. So go and chase for that link. Just kind of maybe send the journalist an email, just kind of politely requesting if they are happy to add in a link. Or you can kind of jump on LinkRec, go and speak to the corrections team. Or if it's not newsjacking, but it's another piece of reactive PR, which you've kind of planned in, maybe just pop it on the blog, just so then the journalist has something to link to.
Cool, absolutely. How do you sell in reactive PR when clients are set on just launching campaigns?
So we show them previous examples, previous case studies, and just kind of explain to them the benefit of doing reactive PR. Yeah,
and it's quick plug here, but if you do want to learn more about that, I'm talking at 2:15 this afternoon. I'm going to be talking about integrating digital PR into SEO, and that's one of the things I'm going to be covering. Two more. The first one is how to convince journalists to put do follow links instead of no follow links. This is probably that $1 million question that comes up every time, whether it's client side, whether it's in discussions like this. What's your take on that, Amy? Because I know you've answered this to someone about 2 days ago. So
that's not we have no control over whether or not a journalist uses a do follow or a no follow link. So that isn't something that we would go and kind of request to change. Quite often it's site-wide too, so it's not even in the journalist's control either. So that isn't something that we personally chase at Digitaloft.
No, and I think it can damage relationships as well. At the end of the day, definitely. Most journalists, and we do have the journalist Q&A panel this afternoon, which I think we will be asking. A lot of journalists don't have control over this. It's set site-wide. And I think as an industry, we need to get out of this habit of almost, assuming that a no-follow link is a bad link. No-follow links drive traffic. They drive sales. Google did, of course, change no-follow last year to be a hint rather than a directive. I am talking about topical PageRank this afternoon. I will go more into depth on that, but it's a really interesting question that comes up all the time. I think we're pretty much done, Amy. One last one. What do you find most rewarding about your role?
I think obviously getting great results for clients, but then also just working alongside great people in the industry.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Amy, there's still 12 unanswered questions on the chat. So either if you want to chat in the chat or take it to Twitter, I'm sure Amy will be more than happy to talk through those. So that was really great, Amy. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I'm sure we all learned a lot from that. And yeah, thank you once again.